For nearly a decade, India has been working towards a comprehensive data protection framework which has now arrived in the form of the Digital Personal Data Protection DPDP Act. For modern enterprises, the focus has shifted from questioning the necessity of these rules to determining how quickly they can align their operations with them. Joining us today to discuss these requirements is Mr. Deepak Mishra, founder and CEO of Prodevans Technologies. So, to start our discussion, could you provide an overview of what the DPDP Act entails and specifically which organizations are required to follow it?
Okay, so India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which is DPDP, it is already in practice, and this is applicable to every organization of any size which is dealing with the digital personal data. Whether you have 100 users, 500 users, or 50,000 users, or 5 million users, it is applicable to all, because one way or other these organizations are dealing with the customer data, or they have developed the apps which is collecting the personal data or the user data. The databases are storing this data. HR is using that for employee record, and we as citizens are also interacting with these organizations, which I will call it as a data fiduciary, and they are having a legal obligation to take consent from every individual before processing the data, and they clearly inform the user that how this data was collected, where the data is being stored, and whether it is being used for any purpose other than the consent was taken. The data which is being collected, whether it is accurate or not. We are all part of the digital platforms, economy, social network. So we need to know that whether the accuracy and the necessity of collecting the data and which is being used, whether it has been safeguarded or not. So the DPDP as a policy covers access the data, discover the data, make sure the data is being collected and correctly used and securely and or protected, and there is a request mechanism for the consent, whether it is considered or withdrawn.
Right. So it is important to highlight that any organization handling digital personal data, whether it is a customer list, a mobile app, or employee records, is now legally considered a data fiduciary with specific responsibilities. So, in your experience, what is the most common mistake organizations make when they begin addressing this new legislation?
Okay, so the biggest mistake organization might end up doing is considering this as a tick mark exercise. I come across organizations where they put a notice on the website or on the app that we are taking consent like a cookie, okay, or organizations which just read the act and pass it to a lawyer, assuming that the legal team will solve the problem, or organization update their privacy policy and they think that they comply, or assuming the compliance is being done and try to retrofit when the audit happens. So DPDP requires an operational change, not a documentation change. This requires a technology change, not just formal compliance. This requires process and people change, so that the way people handle the data, that way should be considered seriously.
That is a critical distinction. Compliance cannot be treated as a simple legal checkbox or a policy update. It requires actual changes to how an organization's internal systems and data flows function. As these rules are currently being rolled out, What should leadership teams understand about the timeline for enforcement and the potential consequences of non-compliance?
The rules are already out. 2025, the guidelines as created in 2023. 2025, the act or the rules or the guidelines are already in action. So it's been almost 6 months and probably a year is left. May 2027 is when the full enforcement is expected. That means the deadline for total compliance is May 2027. Penalties are up to 250 crores. So probably the minimum penalty may not be that much, but the highest penalty is expected to be in the range of 250 crores.
Right. The prospect of penalties reaching hundreds of crores, like you said, emphasizes that the current period must be utilized as a critical build phase for organizational systems. So finally, for a technology or compliance lead who is ready to begin this process today, what are your primary recommendations for a successful starting point?
Each organization has a technology chief or technology person, so the discussion should start with the technology person first. Where while the enforcement has begun, it can be solved technically because data is humongous, data is spread out. There are no certain know-how where the data resides. Classification of personal information versus the disclosable information is also not very clear. So it should be dealt technology wise first. Okay, so start now, engage with your chief technology officer, data officer or information security officer so that it taken seriously. Do regular reviews. So we as an organization have put a committee to make sure that there is a regular review. Have a cleaner, smarter way to handle this particular policy because retrofit is going to cost you a lot. Data audits should be technology driven again. So that means as a fiduciary, the chain of ownership need to be established, and that is what is the regulator want. Make sure the consents are mapped to your application and user journey. So have a consent manager and make sure that how the consent has been taken, whether the consents can be reviewed by the end user, and the end user has the power to accept, renew, revoke the consent. With the revoke of the consent, the data should seamlessly be deleted and the notification be sent to the user.
Right. Beginning with a thorough data audit and an honest assessment of current system capabilities is clearly the best way to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for sharing these insights.